Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Today is going to be a day of, I guess it's kind of like political gossip, but sometimes you've just got to have some political gossip. And I'm here to tell you, there are so many messed up things that happen behind the scenes of the political world. I was just on a business trip and I was just sharing with some of the people on that trip some of the things that I experienced. And it was like people's jaws just at the table. And I forget because that's how I was at first too. When I first heard these things, I'm like, this is impossible that this stuff happens. And now it's just like, I lived these stories, so I own these stories. But someone else who owns these stories is the author of a new book, Matt Palumbo. We've had him on here before. He is the content manager of the Bongino Report. So before we talk to you about George, now we're talking about Alex Soros. The book is called The Heir, Inside the Not-So-Secret Network of Alex Soros. So give us the scoop.
Well, he is his father's son. You know, I think I said in the book, and I think it's probably not a great joke, but I said it's not like the apple fell far from the tree. It's still on the tree, and that they are ideologically aligned. I think the OSF will, at a minimum, just continue doing exactly what it's doing, basically on autopilot, and then Alex will add things on top of that are, you know, more cartoonishly leftist than his father, if you can believe it. The climate issue is one that he is head over heels for. It's, you know, in his first interviews with
such an interesting way to put it. He's just in love with it.
As like the words come to me, they're coming out. It's one that he's been obsessed with. Let's use that word instead. Since the first interviews he's ever done more than a decade ago, and I'll go into more detail in a bit on that. But the reason I say not so secret network in the subtitle is it works with the book about George, where I do say secret network, and I thought, well, it's maybe clever, but also because he made it very easy to track his whereabouts, and that almost everything he does, he posts on social media. So
yeah, he seems to be much more of an attention whore than his father.
And it's weird too, because he's trying to portray himself as more moderate than his father. So it's like he wants the attention, but he doesn't want to be seen as a shadowy figure, I guess. But it made research a lot easier, in that there were a lot of countries I would have never known to even look into. But he'll post a photo with a prime minister of like North Macedonia, and I'm thinking, all right, let's, you know, go back in time and see if George has any connections. And there would always be a story leading up to Alex meeting the person he was with, and it gave me a lot of content, so I'm very grateful for that.
I thought the interesting thing about this was there's literally nothing normal about his life. And obviously I should imagine that there's not going to be anything normal about Alex Soros's life. He's the youngest, right? So he's the youngest son of a multi-billionaire who has influenced governments across the world. So, I mean, you're talking about, I'm reading this and I'm like, he's literally playing with toys next to Hillary Clinton and and you know, all these major world leaders. And that was just his life. So when people talk about him influencing the United States, I think what you need to understand is this guy has no idea what the average American's life is like.
Yeah, I mean, it's true for all of them, and you even see it like on Twitter.com every single day. There, you see the craziest thing of your life from some leftist, and it's like, what? Are you in a different world than the rest of us? But it does seem like they actually are. Even the ones with no money are living in a completely different world than the right. I guess it's the ideology as well. But I talk a lot about in a chapter on his influence in the Biden administration, all of the Biden White House visits, because I noticed they were getting a lot of attention in the New York Post and Fox, but very few people were asking the question or trying to figure out what exactly were they talking about. So my friend Joe Vasquez and I, he works at Media Research Center, just plotted out all the visits. There was about 30 of them, and we lucked out because, and he said this has never happened before, but all of the visitor logs got scrubbed from the White House website after Biden left. And we didn't know if it was because the Biden administration got rid of them or the Trump administration was just clearing out, you know, Biden era stuff. So we don't know what the reason was, but for some reason, my friend Joe just had that book, like an archived version, bookmarked on his computer somewhere. So we lucked out that he's also a nerd, and we were able to go through all of the visits. And in about 2/3 of them, it correlated with some sort of environmental announcement. And we figured, you know, hey, it could just be a coincidence. The Biden administration is big on climate change. Alex is. Maybe we're just correlating things that aren't there. But there was one visit with Joe Biden, and it was on the same day the president of Kenya came to the White House and had an event in the morning. Alex was there. The president of the OSF was there. And of note, the OSF, I should spell that out, Open Society Foundation, which he took over, their headquarters in Africa is in Kenya. So they clearly have influence there. And there were a number of Soros-funded NGOs that were praising the meeting between the Kenyan president and Biden. And within days of this meeting, there was a memorandum of understanding signed with Kenya's Energy Department. The U.S. and USAID were announcing new projects in Kenya. And, given what we know now about the USAID and Soros, it seems like there had to have been some sort of coordination there. So that was there's a lot of original research in the book that took forever to put together. So I hope people do find it useful.
You've done so much research on him. What is he like? What is his personality like? Because I think from the outside, we look at this and we know that George Soros is a very, I guess, unemotional guy. He's not very sympathetic. He's not very loving. You talk in this book about the fact that he's not very loving, and that Alex has come forward and said that Alex was actually not the first choice for him. Right. It was a different son. It was his half brother, right? That was considered the heir apparent. And then it seems like not only is he not loving or dedicated emotionally to even his family members, and obviously we know his background of going in and helping to take the belongings out of Jewish homes during the Holocaust, but in World War II. But this side of him, how has that affected Alex?
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen the guy speak before, but if you haven't, someone described it as speaking, like listening to him speak sounds like a record skipping. He can't get a sentence out. He apparently has gone through media training to try to help him become a more effective spokesperson, but he struggles with that, and he's not really as politically savvy as his father. I mean, he posted a photo with Jasmine Crockett and said that he thinks she's the future of the Democratic Party.
I hope he's right.
To which I'll say, I fear her more than anything. Please, Alex, no. But he was calling for Democrats to stick with Biden even after the first debate disaster. And then after Kamala takes over, then she becomes the best candidate that ever existed. On election day, he predicted she would take every single swing state, which Trump did for the first time in I think it was at least 20 years, or at least got Nevada for the first time in 20 years, in addition to the others. And then after that, writes an op-ed about how we all should have known Trump was going to win. So he is, I guess, like a politician, and that no matter what happens, he'll always act like he's right, but he's just not very smart in that regard. And I don't want to sound like I'm inflating my own ego here, but I get the feeling that he is in some way intimidated by me, or is afraid I'll publish something damning on him, because he's had at least one opportunity to meet me. And I swear to God, this actually happened. We were staying at the same hotel while I was going to speak at an event about his father, and I got in contact with someone that knows him to try to see if he'd want to grab dinner. I was going to ask him to pay, by the way, but no, he was not interested.
Pays for everybody else, so why not?
He could probably afford it.
He can probably swing that.
Makes a bit more than he's more money than I make. So
you gotta keep writing books about him, and then you'll make more.
That's my only key to prosperity. So he denies that, and I got confirmation he denied it. And then in writing this book, you have to try to make an effort to reach out to the guy and get his side of the story. And I had messaged him on Facebook, and you can see if someone read your message, and he was seeing them. So I knew, and it was either him or a staffer who presumably mentioned someone's writing a book about you, and you know who he is because of the book about your father. But yeah, he wasn't interested. And then I finally got a response after calling the Open Society Foundations. They did not like me at all, by the way. Very rude people. But I called them, and then I heard back from his chief of staff, and she was like, "Oh, Alex isn't doing interviews. He doesn't do interviews," is what she said. But if you want to send us a copy of the book to read through, let us know. And I'm like, well, I know it's a setup. You're trying to, act like you're going to help me. Instead of answer a question through an interview, have material through that, which I don't think would be useful. But anyway, a New York Magazine interview with Alex came out last month, and most of the interview took place in February, which is when they told me he wasn't doing interviews. So turns out they were lying, which I was just really shocked about. But no, I'm on his radar. And one thing that happened recently that made me very happy was, I guess, if you get a lot of link backs to something, like in articles, it helps your SEO on Google. So if you Google his name, my book is now one of the top results. So he can't hide forever.
That's no, he can't. No, he can't. But see, that's the funny thing. It seems like he wants to. His dad, or he doesn't want to. His dad wanted to. Like, I feel like George Soros was like this name whispered in the shadows. Like, he does all this stuff. And people were like, I've never really seen anything. No, but we promise you he is doing it. And it was very secretive. But Alex is not secretive. He is posting. I mean, I remember during the campaign, it was everybody was. There was some, I guess it was their apartment, because the pictures of
the photo. It's
the pictures of he and Huma are in like the same area of the world, wherever, with the windows. Of course, I assume they have apartments like this everywhere. But he's got Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, Gretchen Whitmer, everybody that you can think of was with him. I think even Josh Shapiro was pictured with him. All of these people were pictured with him. And that was kind of like, there were a lot of Republicans at that time going, see, we told you. And then we're like, oh, I guess he's just going to be totally exposing this now. Would Jonathan have been the same way? Because I don't know anything about that guy.
I only really know that he has been successful in investments like his father, but not as much information about him. And in fact, the challenge of this book was there's really not much written about Alex, so I had to be a bit of a social media sleuth. But the book took twice as long as the book about his father, and it's about the same length. So it was definitely challenging to get information on that. And there's just not as much, unfortunately, about Jonathan, but he was the first pick, and it's not clear what the reason was why George went with Alex. But in that New York Magazine piece, which ended up being way harder on Alex than I probably would have been, it had quoted official, like higher ups of the Open Society Foundation, including the prior president of the group, saying they were shocked that Alex was picked and that he was probably the worst man for the job. And it's one of those things where I do hope it is actually true.
We have more coming up with Matt Palumbo, but first I want to talk to you about my partners at Ease Health. It's great news. President Trump's executive order slashing the cost of prescription drugs is going after the price gouging for drugs like insulin with Obamacare. You've heard me on this show introduce to you our new healthcare partner, Ease for Everyone, which is a solution to what President Trump is fighting for today and every day. Listen to these simple facts. This is amazing. With Ease for Everyone, you guys get a monthly cost as low as $262. You get over 400 prescription drugs for free. Not a lower cost, but no cost, $0. Plus, you get huge savings on other brand names. You actually get to keep your doctor. Thanks for nothing, Obama. You get free unlimited primary care, unlimited urgent care for a $30 copay, and a generous cashback reimbursement for surgeries and hospital stays, including ICU visits, emergency room visits, ambulance transportation, and doctor's visits. That's $262 a month. You get to actually keep your doctor, and you get over 400 prescription drugs for free. Visit easeforeveryone.com/tutor and join today. That's easeforeveryone.com/tutor. Now stick around. We've got more after this. In the book, you say that he and Jonathan, George, the father, and the son that was supposedly the heir apparent, don't have a great relationship now, but they're still friends. It's just not as close. And I thought, what a strange way to describe your father. Like, we're still friends. It's just kind of a cooled off relationship. And it just, to me, it was very obvious that he's business about everything. There's not a lot of love in any of these relationships.
It's like a very it's not you, it's me perspective on family. It's it's an odd group of people. And Alex himself said his father really wasn't around a lot in his early years. It was just in adolescence that he ended up taking him out to be alongside Hillary Clinton and other world leaders when the rest of us were doing our math homework.
So there's a story about George being this, Nazi collaborator and all of that. And George himself hasn't really denied that. He actually was very casual about, whatever it is what it is. Alex has defended him and said that's not the case. Is Alex's personality different? Does he have a soft, maybe penetrable side considering the fact that it obviously bothers him. That says something about him psychologically.
Well, I can confirm he's never confiscated goods from Jews or ordered their deportation, so he has that in his favor. I would say most people probably have more empathy than George, so I guess I'll give Alex credit for that. But I know what you're referencing. He wrote an op-ed for New York Daily News where it was titled something like, debunking lies about my father. And this is very common when people try to debunk this claim about George, which he said out loud on 60 Minutes, and anyone can go watch it on YouTube or read the transcript, is they never mention what they're debunking. They just say, they say he's a Nazi. Actually, it's not true because he's Jewish. And they never quote the transcript. They never give any context clues. And I had talked about this in the first book, and Alex just gave me an opportunity to just elaborate more on it because he specifically recommended his grandfather's book about his grandfather's autobiography, which talks about this, and said that, if you read this, it exonerates my father. It really did no such thing. It did not help his case whatsoever. I mean, yes, George was not literally a Nazi, but he did go along with it. And it's not even necessarily, I make this point, it's not even necessarily what he did, as you could always play it off as, well, I had a gun to my head. What would you do? George doesn't even make that argument. It's just, if I didn't do it, someone else would. So, well. It's the lack of empathy that really stands out more than even what he did and how cold he was in talking about it.
So I know that Alex is married now, but he comes off as like this kind of sad and almost the opposite of his father, where a lot of this empathy is, like you talked about, his love for climate change and all of these things, but almost to a point where he is somewhat like a moldable high school kid, like little incel nerd, and you watch what he focuses on and you think, gosh, this is a lot of power for someone who has been influenced by such kind of radical theories on things. And you talk about Ukraine. I mean, he has influence in all of these areas. Yep. I thought he was super young. So before we got on, I'm like, how old is he? He looks like he's, I always kind of assumed that he was so immature about his political leanings because he was a little kid, but he's 39.
He looks younger than me, which I guess isn't good news for me. But yeah, he's 39.
Why isn't he sharing those secrets instead of spending money on politics?
Yeah,
we want his healthcare routine.
So maybe you age at a slower rate than the rest of us. I don't know.
Going into a cryo bed at night.
I think he was 50, or if not, like 48 to 50. So it's I don't know, very large age gap there. Not like there's anything wrong with that. But it is an interesting mashup, given that the OSF has had long ties with Hillary Clinton, and obviously, Huma has been her number two for a while. I guess considering she was with Anthony Weiner beforehand, this is the best possible upgrade that could ever, proportionally, that could ever happen. So good for them, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, this seems like a marriage of convenience. I mean, I don't know. Who am I to judge? Maybe it's true love. I can't tell. I
hope so. Why not?
I don't know, but I will say, I mean, that alone, though, the fact that she had so much involvement with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, we've got this Ukraine situation going on. Tell me about his involvement in Ukraine.
So his father had, in fact, in the last book, the Ukraine chapter, I believe, was either the longest or second longest, and just talking about how entrenched George was in Ukraine after funding the Maidan Revolution in 2014, and how that benefited him financially and in terms of influence. Alex has continued that, and among the other things he's done, in addition to just knowing, seemingly every person in Parliament, a number of members of Alex's cabinet, Zelensky's cabinet, he donated $1 million to an NGO that is run by Zelensky's wife, which, I get you can't commingle funds, but if you're taking $200 billion, I figure something of that genre is probably not too hard to fund in some regard. And it just seemed like an obvious case of buying influence. And one example that I think I found of corruption, and it ties in to what is the longest chapter in this book, which is about his role in Albanian politics. And Again, it's a country most people probably have never thought of before, but it works as a microcosm of how Alex will work as a whole in reshaping a country. And he's very close to the Prime Minister, Eddie Rama, who just won his 4th consecutive term. He's a member of the Socialist Party. And there was a munitions deal negotiated recently between Ukraine and Albania, where there was many, many millions of munitions that Albania was to produce for Ukraine. But Albania is not capable of actually producing any of these things at all. So they're subcontracting it out to a different country. And it raises the obvious question of like, well, why wouldn't you just go to that country? Why are you introducing a middleman who's going to charge some sort of fee to then make someone else do the work? And it's one of those things that it makes sense in context of Alex and Eddie Rama and Zelensky brokering that sort of deal. And the three have even been photographed at events together. So I assume that's the case. And Rama himself has overseen the explosion of narco trafficking in his country. And, it's just a country where I can't prove overall that he is benefiting in mass corruption, but it's a country that's so tiny and dare I say irrelevant on the global scale. I mean, the average income there is $10,000 a year. There's no real reason to be involved in a country like that unless you're benefiting from something,
Well, also, this is a country that is weak because they just came out of communism. So this was what in the 90s they just
92, and George was the biggest international donor into the country. After that, I actually talked to the former Minister of Education in Albania in I think it was 2005 to 2008, and he told me that they had a joke that the Soros schools were the Ministry of Education and they were the sub department, because it was more than half of all schools there were funded or founded by George Soros and were teaching his ideology.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So that's another thing though. He wants this. So Alex, his love of climate, all of that, that's what he's pushing into our education, right?
Yep. Yes. And I mean, so me and Joe Vasquez, the guy I mentioned who I did the other study with, did one, and this took us 3 months to do. It was maddening. We went through every single climate grant that the OSF has ever issued and put them into a spreadsheet, which was, thousands. It took us so long. Anyway, we found that from 2016 to when Alex took over the OSF, it was like around $170 million that they spent on climate. And the data only went back to 2016. I guess, thank God for my sanity. But so 170 million from that time period. From when Alex took over onward, he's pledged 438 million to climate in the past 2 years. So more than double in 2 years than what was spent from 2016 to when he took over. And the thing, too, is a lot of these are umbrella groups where climate is their, what they're named after or their central focus, but then for some reason they're like protesting for Palestine. And you're going, what? I thought you were planting trees. Like every left-wing group does that, where they sort of take on every group in the every cause in the left-wing portfolio, and they just pick one to emphasize. And climate groups just love doing this, where they are they just put climate in the name, but what they actually do can be completely different. They just do one climate function.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. So let me ask you this. There have been these rumors that Democrats, and maybe they're not even rumors, maybe they're just outright saying they want to have a shadow party. So they're talking a shadow government. They're talking about having a full shadow government, their own cabinet secretaries. And I think people go, oh my gosh, that's crazy. How could that happen? But when you have, because when you have money, you can do that. And when you have the combination of Huma Abedin and Alex Soros, which is really just the Clintons with a lot of money. And the Clintons have a lot of power. Hillary Clinton can walk into any government and talk to the heads of state. I mean, she has that ability. So when you have this kind of money combined with that, and I think everybody, when they got married, went, that's interesting. What is that exactly about? And like I said, maybe it's true love. No one believes that. So what is the deal with this shadow government? Could they potentially be a part of this?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And people will, I mean, the term shadow makes it sound conspiratorial, but shadow governments have been around forever. It just means you make a parallel cabinet to the ruling administration. And in fact, if Biden was still in office, technically me, you, and your audience could all start calling ourselves, all right, I'm the shadow labor secretary, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but you and I cannot just walk into Zelensky's office. They can.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I was going to say the difference here would be they actually would have power, and they would be people who are already in government, assuming these positions, and they have the same platform that anyone in Congress would have, and they own the media, so it helps them get their message out. I mean, I remember in the first book I did an analysis of who are people that were on the boards of Open Society Foundation companies that then served on the board of media companies. And it's like basically every single company except Newsmax and Fox, like, and obviously this one. But, it's pretty much everywhere. And if you don't believe me, just type in George or Alex Soros into the search bar in any mainstream media website, and it's either praising them or claiming to debunk a conspiracy against them.
What do you think his ultimate goal is? Because it seems like he loves to fund chaos and destabilization. So if you look at the whole, from Jussie Smollett to George Floyd to defunding the police, all of these, even you brought up Jasmine Crockett, like all of these people, and even going after Donald Trump, all of these, Alvin Bragg, everybody that they have encouraged, and they have these rogue prosecutors all over the country. What is the end game?
It's a tough question to answer because I always feel like I'm being lazy in saying they just want to sow chaos because they're evil. But is that not the most obvious or the simplest explanation? Like, I can't think of a better one. I guess you could intellectualize it by saying, well, they want to burn the whole system down to then create something new out of it. But the thing they're going to create new out of it is going to be chaotic anyway. So, and their ideology is deliberately open-ended. Like, we all remember the cities burning down in 2020, and it was over police killing black people, but there was 12 unarmed black people killed by police in the entire country that year, and it was the all-time low at that point. It was down even 80% just from 5 years prior. So you could just as easily say, hey, it was horrible what happened, but in fact, that we've made the most progress on this issue we've ever had, and it's down every year, and it's heading in the right direction. It's all framing. So, so far as there is one injustice in the entire country, they can just make chaos out of that. And there's a million examples you could give of the left doing this. There were groups that were, and this isn't really chaos related, but there were groups that were created to support same-sex marriage. And when same-sex marriage got legalized, did they go away because, hey, we reached our goal, time to disband, or B, did they just champion a new cause and keep raising money? And the answer is B. They pivoted to, well, we now support some vague notion of tolerance and kindness, and so as long as there's one video of some kid getting called a slur, we can continue to raise money. And every single left-wing cause deliberately has no end. There's never a goal. You could be in a communist country, and they're still going to claim it's not communist enough. So they structure their activism so it will go on forever. Any goals, even if they feel they reach them, will always be portrayed as if they're not reached.
So, okay.
Is that an okay answer? I feel like that's my least lazy version.
No, I think that's good. I think that we just watch this and so it seems like he's not necessarily getting where he wants to go, but what is his ideology? Is he a socialist? Is he a Marxist? Is he a communist? Like, where does he want the country to go?
So he portrays himself just as your standard progressive liberal, but while trying to present himself as a moderate. But I guess given the left today, being a progressive Democrat is a moderate somehow. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But he has continued funding all of the radical groups his father is funding. So, there was an example I gave where he's trying to portray himself as being moderate on Israel, where he's critical of Israel, but is also critical of Hamas and wants a two-state solution and all that. But he chairs Central European University, which his father started, funds still. They have their own university network called the Open Society University Network, where he partners with other colleges to spread the Open Society Soros ideology. And one of them is Al Quds University, where the terror group Islamic Jihad once held a demonstration where they were doing Nazi salutes and cursing Israel. And this was after they partnered with them. So they have never gotten rid of this partnership. The faculty at the university has defended it. They regularly hold like Martyrs Day protests for certain Palestinians who've given up their lives killing Jewish people in terrorist attacks. And this is a group he has not broken off that partnership with. So it's hard to believe, like, unless he's just somehow is not aware of all of this, in which case he should definitely buy my book. He's complicit in it.
All right. So the last thing I will ask you is how much money does he actually play with in every election cycle?
So it's in the single digit, or it's below 10 million, more than 5 million. I apologize for, I don't want to give the exact number and get it wrong. It was between 5 and 10 million. And it was actually a bit less. The OSF gave less than in 2020. So, but one of the things they did was they also started funding news outlets to propaganda. There's one called Courier Newsroom that was like 20 million, and it was to fund what was presented as impartial news in swing states that had a left-wing bias. So technically, the funding to candidates went down, but when you factored in that other spending, it was actually among the highest it's ever been. So it depends how you look in the data, but he went into that media strategy. The OSF right now has $20 billion, or $25 billion, I should say, and obviously he's getting interest on that every year. So, if 5% a year is what, 1.25 billion. If I'm doing the math, someone will point it out in the comments. But
Democrats should have to put in their financial disclosure, their in-kind donations, and list MSNBC and Washington Post and all of these places. Yeah. But they couldn't, because it would be way beyond what you can get as an in-kind. I mean, we're talking about them getting hundreds of millions of dollars worth of media for free because of him. So when people hear that number, they might think that's not a huge impact. But what you're saying is so key, because that is where the impact is. And
people do trust local news more than national. And in fact, the liberals do own the national media, but generally speaking, conservatives have more influence on local news, like through Sinclair owns a ton of stations and all that. So that was their attempt to sort of thwart that. And, thank God it didn't work. I mean, one of my favorite stats from the last election, because I'm in New Jersey, was that the election was closer in Jersey than in Arizona, meaning, like, it's, what does that mean when even in Jersey where it was, I think, 52-48? Like, that's never happened before for a Republican since I guess the 88 or whenever. So I know everything is trending right. It's great. I guess Americans are actually smart. You can't completely trick them, despite how much money you have. Okay, so the book is called The Heir, Inside the Not So Secret Network of Alex Soros. So tell us when it comes out, how people can get it. So it comes out December 8th. I've realized that people don't like to pre-order books, so I'm still trying to think of like a sales pitch for that. But one thing, I guess they're Christmas. Christmas. That's the perfect gift, because it's like one of those that when you don't know what to get someone, they definitely want. Everybody's guilty pleasure is the gossip about how this stuff is going on. Let me redo this. The book's out December 8th. Right ahead of Christmas, get one for your wife, get some for your kids and your family. December 8th, lock in your purchase now. All right, that's my. One thing though with the book, I screwed up with the title, because there's a best-selling series called The Heir that has sold millions of copies. So of course you search the book and it's all that. So type Alex Soros in the search bar and it'll be first. Okay, all right, you got it now. Pay attention. This is your Christmas gift, everybody. I mean, honestly, I would like this as a Christmas gift. Perfect. So I think that if I would like it, then the people listening to this, they will also like it. So could not agree more. Matt Palumbo, thank you as always for coming on today. Always fun. Thank you. Always fun. And thank you all for joining the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to watch the video, go to Rumble @Tudor Dixon. Join us next time. Have a blessed day.